to the Aussie Game. I'm your host, Brian Walters. And even though my guest today is in Bangkok, sadly, I'm not there right now, but we are talking Thai football with the one and only man that we could. It's Gian Chansrichawla. Gian, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah. It's been a while. I don't know. Who knows what time is anyway, but you are back in Bangkok from your studies over in the UK. How are things in the big smoke in the big city?
I'm very happy to be back right during the off season when there's no Thai league to watch. And right after the World Cup qualifiers. But no, it's just great to be back and just enjoying home, really.
Enjoying home, enjoying the food. I'm currently in Taiwan. The food here is great, but I'm always missing Thai food when I'm outside of Thailand. So it won't be long before I'm back there. It won't be long before we're going to games together. It won't be long before the season's back on. But for folks that maybe weren't able to pay attention, we're going to put a lid on the season that was today. And like you say, it's the off season, but I don't know. I think it's one too many FIFA saves. I never was a football manager guy. I like to play the game sometimes, so I have to do the FIFA save. But I love being in career mode. So the transfer window, when those little arrows show up on the screen, that's kind of my jam. So I like the off season quite a bit. So I think there's still quite a bit for us to dig into there, and maybe not as exciting for Muangthong fans, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that bit.
As a Muangthong fan, the off-season transfer window is the most horrifying time. You're like, which player are owners going to sell for a quick buck this year? And it's just a constant, But so far, we've been okay. I think our window so far has been pretty good.
Optimistic as we head into things. Not to squash that optimism, but let's talk about one of your other favorite teams in Thailand. Let's talk about Buriram United. Let's talk about the champs. It is their, I'm going to put an asterisk next to this. It's their 9th Thai League 1 title. I know it's contentious. We'll just say it's their 9th. That's what they're saying is their 9th. Yeah, we'll leave it there. Anybody else that wants to get into it, that's what the comments on another post are for. Or, hey, this one, engagement's engagement. But yeah, not surprising to an outside observer, I think, not surprising given the team's success, but maybe a little bit surprising considering the way the season went. They did, however, at one point manage to go 18 matches unbeaten. So again, on paper, I think everything fits. But in practice, do you think that this was it a deserved title? Was it a little bit surprising in the end? What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, it's difficult to say because, I mean, the whole season was characterized by just debacles with the manager. I mean, to start off with, they replaced Masada Ishii. Now, if you go on the Thai League Wikipedia page for last year, you will see next to Ishii's name that he was signed by Thailand from Buriram. This is not true. He was not signed by Thailand. He was replaced by Buriram first, who then lobbied to create the Thailand national team vacancy, which Ishii then moved into at the expense of Mano Polking. Now, I happen to think, and I've said this in the beginning, it was a bad dismissal, but a good appointment. So Mano shouldn't have been dismissed, but Ishii was the perfect man, given that Mano was going to be dismissed, which in itself was dubious. But anyways, I bring this up to say that was the start of their season, was this weird managerial shuffling that needed to happen to a guy who just won back-to-back trebles, which is a bit ridiculous. Classic Buriram business, dreadful decision-making. So that happened. Because Thirathon supposedly wanted his good friend Arthur Papas, who was Ange Postecoglou's assistant at Yokohama Marinos and had a great relationship with Thirathon.
Don't forget the F, Yokohama F Marinos.
Yes.
Lest we forget.
Who had a great relationship with him. So in comes Papas, who does well, but has a very long series of draws, at which point the fans call for his head because they drop down the table. I believe they get as low as 3rd or 4th at one point. So yeah, I get those 4th. So then they call for his head. They stick with him. They give him new players in the window, including Guilherme Bissoli, who scored 16 goals in 15 games. So ultimately, that is the push that took them over the line. But just when things are getting better for Papas, they replace him. During an international break, when Teoton is not in the camp to protect him, supposedly, he's replaced, which shows how much power Teoton has, possibly the most powerful footballer I've ever seen in my life. And then they bring in Jorginho Campos, who I think wins 5 out of his 7 games and then is replaced again at the end of the season. So is it a deserved win? I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's an insane season from Buriram where everything goes slightly wrong, but then the big picture, everything goes really right. So that's just how they do it, and they win. And also we have to say that Bangkok United slip up towards the end was another big reason why they did that. BU are known famously for being the chokers of the Thai League, having run people close many times. They've never won a Thai League title. They won one in 2007 under their previous name, Bangkok University. So if they won another one, it'd be contentious whether they have two, because that's how Thai League operates. But they started very strongly, dropping only 4 points in their first 10 games. But in their last 10, they dropped 11 points, including losing to already relegated Police Taro, or basically relegated Police Taro, etc. So that was a real bummer for their fans and for all the neutrals who wanted to see Buriram stop by really anybody. But they did a classic Bangkok United and couldn't see it over the line.
Reminded me of the old K-League United days and talking about Ulsaning. But hey, Ulsaning now means that they're going to win the league. So maybe that's what's coming up for Bangkok United as well. But yeah, again, I think from an outside observer just looking and saying, oh, Buriram won again. Surprise, surprise. But as always, there's a lot more to the story there. But I mean, yeah, they are continually up there. They are one of the strongest teams in the region for a reason. So you can only play who's put in front of you, and they won their games, and Bangkok United didn't at the end there, which we'll see what happens in the next season. But you mentioned a couple of teams there that were in the relegation fight. I think Police Taro, given the off-field issues there this season, no surprise that they were relegated, considering there were question marks about if they were going to be a club, if they could pay players, what was going on day to day. I think that basically once all that kind of started coming through, the writing was pretty much on the wall that it was not going to be, they weren't going to be in T1 for very long. And Trot, I think, maybe not really a big surprise there either, but a name that I think a lot of folks will know, and if they don't know the crest, it is arguably the best crest in all of football. I might be partial to Sharks, who knows? But Chonburi got relegated. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was a big surprise. Chonburi are a huge club historically. They were among the first clubs to be promoted to the Thai League from outside Bangkok. So before, I believe, 2006, it was all just Bangkok teams, and there was a separate provincial league. Chonburi came up along with Suphanburi. Then they won the league in 2007. And they were the first club to sort of cultivate a big fan base. Big Chonburi fan, Dale Farrington, who runs the Thai Football Podcast, will tell you that Buriram exists today because Chonburi went to a friendly in the Northeast, where Buriram's future owner, Newin Chitchop, was in attendance, saw what they were doing and said, let's do that, but with more investment. Basically, that's the story in a nutshell. And so there's that side to it, where they literally, changed Thai football by decentralizing it and creating this culture where, a team is tied to a location and has a fixed set of fans, as opposed to before when it was like company teams, etc., etc. And since then, they've been a really big player in the Thai League. They've produced a lot of international players, or Thai national team players. They've always been there or thereabouts, and they've always been one of the best supported clubs. I mean, if you go around Bangkok on the back of trucks, I mean, whenever you do see Thai League team logos, it's usually Buriram, Muangthong, and then Chonburi, because these three are the biggest historically. But Chonburi have been in a very long, very slow sort of stagnation, slowly dropping down the table, going from competing for titles to competing for top 4 to being in mid-table, and then ultimately this year going down. And I think it's ultimately a story of sort of complacency in a sense, where the clubs around them, a lot of clubs now, because we have a 16-team Thai league, and a lot of new clubs who've been promoted or lots of experience going down before, and they had a really strong drive to sort of invest and stay up. Chonburi thought that their place in T1 was kind of, guaranteed. They didn't invest in the squad. They had aging players who downed tools when things got difficult. And so it was a really weird mix between really aging players, really old players who were not carrying their weight, and then very young players who are fantastic and very talented, but don't have the bottle for that kind of relegation fight. And they had issues, with the coach. Wittia Lahakun, ex national team, played in the Bundesliga back in the day, huge Thai national team legend. He came in. I think he's in his late 60s. He stepped in from his being a director back into being head coach. Temporarily gave them a surge, but it wasn't enough, and they're now in T2, which is hard to fathom. But for anyone who's watched Chonburi for a long time, you can see that that's the way that the club was heading.
Yeah, I mean, and again, everything always harkens back to K-League for me, but you see the Suwon Blue Wings go down there, and it's one of those ones I think for folks that are familiar with K-League, I think that that's a pretty apt comparison of a team that it's just surprising that they're down there. Not quite like when the mighty Jeonnam Dragons went down and the whole world stopped, for example. Or I am currently, for those watching the video, you can see it. For those listening to the podcast, I am currently wearing a Chiang Mai FC top. And who knows what league they'll be in if they even exist. That's one where I think, like we were saying, like with Police Taro, with Trot, like you could kind of see these ones coming. But I think Chonburi, yeah, it's a big blow. But I think it's also one where sometimes these big clubs need that wake-up call, and hopefully for them, this is what that'll be. They can restructure and come back stronger. You hope that's what it is, because like you say, that kind of following, you don't want to necessarily see them in the second division for too long. And just enjoy those away days, Chonburi fans, and then go ahead and get back up to T1. So hopefully it'll be something that ends up being a good thing for them. And like you say, I think the youth players there, maybe T2 is a better fit for them to kind of find their footing and get ready to come back up to T1 with all of that experience. And speaking of young players with plenty of experience, let's go ahead and move on to some of the big name players in T1 there. I was going to say no surprise here, but I think maybe it is a little bit surprising. The top scorer in T1 was Supachai, and of his 21 goals, just one of them was a penalty, which is outstanding. I say maybe no surprise because obviously Buriram, they score a lot of goals. But the main thing is, for me anyway, a lot of times we don't see Asian leagues with a domestic player finishing at the top of the scoring charts. How important do you think it is for Thai football and for developing young players to have a Thai player lead the league in scoring?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, we need a focal point up top as a Thai national team. Tirasin is now 36. So the question of who will be his successor was an open one for a very long time. And I think Supachai went through his first 2 seasons at Buriram scoring only 3 goals in a lot of minutes as well. You can fact check me on that later, but I think that's the stat. And people were really doubting him, calling him all sorts of, names that he's not a real striker, he's this and that. A few people stuck by him, including Tactic Times stuck by him. I didn't, I'll admit, I was wrong. And he's turned out to be a fantastic player. And he's the kind of player who just knows where the space is, knows where to be, and get in the right position to score. It took a long time for him to adapt to playing in Buriram, and it similarly took a long time for him to adapt to playing in the Thai national team. So I think until Ishi's era, he just never looked comfortable in the national team. But now his confidence is really high after this Golden Boot. Ishi knows him very well. Ishi deserves a lot of credit for developing him, but so does Gama, the coach before, also helped develop him a lot. I think he's talked about both being very important to his development as a striker. So it's really huge that he's gotten that. And the question now is, do you want him to move abroad? Because there are apparently a couple of J-League teams who are interested in him. And again, I'm a huge advocate for sending players abroad. I think it's worked really well. Chanatip, Superchok. etc. It's fantastic opportunity to play at a higher level. But the question is, with Superchai, is scoring every week and getting your confidence up actually going to bring sort of a bigger benefit to his national team performances than maybe struggling in a stronger league, especially when he plays a system that is really built around him, that he's so familiar with Buriram, his teammates, how they play. And Bisoli is not an out-and-out number 9 as well. He's sort of operates in the half spaces. He's not a target man. So he plays well with Superchai up front. And on a season with Bisoli, who's super talented, you could see those numbers get even better. So there's a merit to staying, which looks like what he's doing now. And it's an open question whether going abroad was better or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it could be another year as well. Maybe just one more year with Buriram, win a couple more trophies, because that's just what they do. Like you say, keep that confidence high, and hopefully we'll see him in the AFF Championship later this year. We'll see. Buriram's a little bit busy when it comes to scheduling things. They're just a touch busy with 2 international competitions and what is it now, 17 different domestic competitions that there are in Thailand. I know this before, but they will be quite busy. So. I like what you're saying, though, the idea that I think there's always this impetus of, like, as soon as someone is good in an Asian league, it's like, oh, get them abroad. You know, if it's K-League or J-League, then it's, oh, they've got to go to Europe. And if it's Southeast Asian, then it's, oh, they've got to go to Japan, which, pick it up, K-League, by the way. Pick it up. Get some more ASEAN players. Sometimes I think just keeping your confidence high is worthwhile. And we talk all the time on this show about Win Kong High. And I think that's an apt comparison here, because you can move too early and you can maybe not have things end up working out in the short term. I think Kong Hai will be fine in the long term, but we'll save him for the Vietnamese shows. I know how much Thai League fans love talking about Vietnamese national team players, so I'll just move right along there. And
the player that argument applies to, I think, because of how long he took to adapt to being in Buriram. I think everybody else, I would say, yeah, go play in Japan. Come on, let's be serious here. But Superchai, I was talked out by a friend. I was talked out of it and be like, if he goes, will it be a problem? Will he not score goals? Don't you want him scoring goals every week? And I'm like, yeah, we do. And it's fantastic that he's doing that. So maybe one exception in Superchai.
Well, and if you get back-to-back 20-goal seasons, then I think you're definitely ready for that move. And I think that also puts him into a different category of teams that would be interested in Japan as well. Instead of maybe, look, all of us that love ASEAN football, I think, have a soft spot for Consadole Sapporo for obvious reasons at this point. But if you can avoid being in a relegation scrap and you can be maybe a mid-table team where you can get regular minutes and you can get comfortable and you can get into things, I think maybe that'd be a better situation for him. So it's a good shout. I like that one. We'll skip over. I just wanted to mention that Tiratan led the league in assists, just to kind of put a bow on things. And because as a Yokohama F. Marinos fan, I got to mention Tiratan every now and again, the man that everybody in Thai football loves so much, as you alluded to earlier. But let's keep things positive, though.
Yeah. We'll talk about how we did a throat slitting gesture to the port hardcore. Let's not talk about that. Let's keep things positive. Yeah.
Let's not even mention it.
Yeah, let's not even mention it.
Let's not even mention it. That's not something to. Yeah, we won't even bring it up. That's for the other shows to talk about. We're not here to debate if Tiratan is great or the greatest. That's not what we're here to debate.
Yeah.
Just as long as he keeps bleaching the hair and pinging those 60-yard diagonals, everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. Yeah, the player that I love to watch on the field, and that's just where I'll leave that one from my personal side of things. Speaking of personal things, you are brought in for your expertise in this league, and so I want to know your awards. Who was your MVP of the league this year?
I mean, it kind of has to be Bisoli, right? Like, to come in there and score that many goals and completely change the complexion of the title race and just see Buriram run away with it. I mean, Superchai is up there. I typically don't like to give MVP awards to strikers. As a defender myself, I think that forwards get too much credit as it is. But, like, you have solely changed the title race completely. Like, yeah, he just came in and he just that was it. It was done. The moment we saw him, I think he scored like 4 goals against Taro in like his like second game. We're like, yeah, it's done. Goodbye. The league's over. And if a player can do that, that like they have to be the MVP. Like, that's it. And he's only played half a season. Like, come on, what? Sad.
A defender admitting that the strikers get to win. Well, the strikers do always win the awards. We all know that. There's no equivalent of the Golden Boot for a defender.
No, a Buriram and a forward getting an award for me. This is a combination I never wanted to deal with. But here we are.
While wearing blue as well. Oof.
Oh, blue. It's different.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's move on a little bit then to some surprises. We talked a little bit about Chonburi, obviously. Was there another team that surprised you this year?
Yeah, actually, there's 2 teams that surprised me in a positive direction, which are the 2 other promoted teams. So Trat came up and went straight back down. So did Nakhon Pathom and Uthai Thani. And of those 3, Trat has the most experience in T1. So we thought if anyone was going to have a good season, it would be them because they're used to it. But my goodness, the other 2 really popped off. And Nakhon Pathom especially, they hired Akbar Nawaz, a Singaporean coach, and they did extremely well on a very, very low budget. So, for example, the teams around them in mid-table were paying salaries 4 times more than them at a regular basis. They really had a T2 squad on a T2 budget, and Akbar Nawaz kept them comfortably in T1. So I think even with 10 games left, the chance that we're going to go down was very small. I mean, the league was very tight, so there was only a few points gap between like 13th and 7th. But despite that, they just looked very comfortable, and they looked like they could take points off anybody on their day. And they play really well. They are difficult to face. It's not just sitting back in the box. It's being positive, pressing in the right areas, playing pretty attractive football at times with a extremely low budget. So that's a huge, like, for me, Akbar Nawaz is my manager of the year. And if you follow me on Twitter, you will see me regularly just posting at Muangthong, hire Akbar Nawaz like every once in a while. But they've just hired a new coach now, so we'll see how he does. And the other one that surprised me was Uthai Thani, the other promoted team, for kind of the opposite reason, which is they showed the desire to invest quite a bit. So they've invested in bringing in a lot of players. They're sort of making themselves out to be the place for half Thai players who are struggling to get into other teams or struggling to find their feet. So, for example, Ben Davis is now there, and he's kind of their key man over there. They loaned in William Vadasha from Port FC, who's half Swedish and was struggling to get games. He went over to Uthai Thani and had a great season. I'm sure there's a couple of others that are escaping me right now, but they're making themselves out as this location for promising young talents, and they've been called by some on Twitter as the Brighton of Thai League, which I don't think is quite accurate because they're not signing players that we haven't heard of. They're signing players that we all know, but they're talented players who we all know are good, but for whatever reason haven't managed to become regulars, and they're creating an environment where it's beneficial to young players. And I think young players want to go play there, and there's not much pressure. It's an upwardly mobile team, and it's willing to invest, and that's quite a positive thing.
That's a good shout. Like that, yeah. And like you say, I think Ben Davis is a name that came in with a lot of hype, and good to see him getting some regular minutes there. Obviously, it didn't work out quite as well at Port as I think a lot of us expected when that move was made. And yeah, a couple of good shouts there. Outside of those players, were there any other players that caught your eye this season or surprised you a bit?
Yeah, so I've got 2 here. I've got to get my Muangthong bias in. So I've got one, which is Parameet Admirai, the scorer of that incredible goal against Singapore. He's another Thai striker who, because of the way the league is and the form player quota is, that you don't get to see him be up top. He shifted to the flank, shifted as number 10, etc. But this season, Muangthong's foreign striker really didn't live up to the billing, shall we say, as politely as I can say it. I've had some choice words for him on Twitter, which I want to apologize if he ever sees my tweets. Sorry, mate. But yeah, I was angry. We were struggling, and you can't blame me. Anyway, so Parameet got to be the main man up top, and he finishes the season with 11 goals and 10 assists, which is really impressive return for a Thai player. He is in his mid-20s now, so it's a little bit late for a breakout. I think he's a year or a year and a half older than Superchai, so it's a bit late for a breakout season, unfortunately, to reach a really high level. But I think that he's shown that he can be a regular for Muangthong and be a very useful part of the Thai national team. Whether that's being a backup to Supanat more likely than to Superchai, he is sort of a bit better as a supporting striker, but he can also be a backup to Superchai and come off the bench and make an impact, as we saw for Thailand. And if any club's going to send him abroad, it's Muangthong. So he's in a really good position. Whether he stays in Muangthong next season or goes on loan to J1 or J2, we'll have to wait and see. But he had a fantastic campaign. Really happy for him because he's a really, really lovely guy. And the other one is Akrapong, whom we say from Lamphun. And his story is very interesting because he's been with Lamphun since they were in T3. And he's come up with them. He's their captain. He's been their captain for a long time. He came up in the ranks with them. And he's sort of a box crashing number 8, sort of a Lampard style number 8, where he'll arrive at the edge of the box to score at the right time. And he scores that, it's a very simple, the trademark goal where he sort of finds his way to the edge of the box. Ball comes in, usually a one-touch finish. And he got 9 goals from central midfield playing that way, which is really impressive. And he got his first call-up as well in the most recent international break. Didn't get any minutes, but look, Ishi's watching. Ishi's watching T1, he's watching T2, and it's good. Akrapong deserves the shout. Just
a note to other Asian team managers, go ahead and watch your domestic league. There's a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
Klinsmann. Nobody comes to mind. Klinsmann. Nobody comes to mind. I'm not good at Klinsmann. But watch your domestic leagues. There's a lot of talent there. Yeah, and I think that's a great point in general, that I think there is talent across the board. There are a lot of really exciting players to watch in Thai League, and then that was last season. And I think this coming season, and we're moving on to transfers here, because you did talk about if anybody's going to move anybody out, it's going to be Muangthong, and they've already moved a couple of people out, brought a couple of people in, but I think really there's only one place in my mind that we can start when it comes to the transfer window, and that is that Port FC have gone wild. Port have it's basically anybody that has left that has some experience in Thai League, they've just snapped them up. I think Irfan Fandi is one of the biggest names that comes to mind for me, a Singapore national team player that did really well with BG. They went and got him. They got Mota, they got Pirdal. They've been snapping everybody up. Do you think this is going to work? Are they going to be title contenders with this many people coming in?
Yes, and I hate to admit it, but I have to praise them. So in the past, Port would do what you said. They just sign anybody who has a big name and has a few caps. They'd snap them up. And then they wouldn't know what to do with them because they'd end up with like 5 left backs and like 5 central midfielders, and it would be a mess. But now, basically, what's happened, from what I understand, is when Madame Pang went to the FA, she took her sporting director with her to help run the FA, and basically the coach Rangsan, who was at Taro and was responsible for keeping Taro up for a long time, he basically was in position already to influence the way the team was going to be structured after Madame Pang left. So looks like he's had a lot of say in what's been going on, more so than any other previous Port coach that I can think of. He's actually in the driver's seat picking the players. And what he was known for at Taro was he plays good football and he signs the right profiles and he's fantastic. I mean, he really carried Taro to stay in T1 long after they had any right to be there. And he's similarly helping. The ownership change damaged Taro, but losing him was already like, my goodness, he's a really fantastic coach. And so he's got the right players that he needs. He went for, obviously, as you mentioned, he got Irfan. He also got Isaac Honey, who was a center back at Taro for a very long time. So that looks like it'll be that pairing. But they've also got, Franz Butros, Iraq international, who can come and play center back as well. So they're very stacked, very strong at the back, which is always, the base. Can you defend and can you build up from the back? You have players that can build up, and you have like Butros and Irfan. That's a fantastic base to play attacking game, a possession game. Then they signed Chayawat Buran from Lamphun, who's another left back. So now they've got two fullbacks who are very good in each position. They've got Supanan, Thai international, and Asnawi, Indonesian at right back, and they've got Kevin and Chansrichawla at left back. So that back line looks extremely strong. And then they went and got two, in typical Port extravagant fashion, they've got two amazing center forwards. William Mota, who just scored 20 goals, one less than Super Shy last season, and Dumbuya, who was released by Buriram, and really only Port and BG could afford a salary, and BG already settled on bringing in ex-Johnbook Lars Veldvik as their target man. So he was just there. Port snapped him up. They've got two center forwards now, so if one gets injured, one's out, you can continue to play the same sort of dynamic attacking style with two different options. And then to knit it all together, they've got Piradon, which is he's just fantastic. He's incredible. I think you look at how he played for Thailand recently under Ishi. He's been incredible. It's really unfortunate that he's left Buriram. I think the fans often say that, I think 2 years ago he was their MVP in Ishi's first season, or he was such an important player for them. And basically Buriram, Tirton's future is in central midfield. So Piradon's not going to start every game, and he's a player who deserves to start every game in T1 because he's that good. And his dad actually played for Port a long time ago, so he has this deep connection to the club. I think he posted a baby photo of himself in a Port kit when he signed, which
nice.
Has a deep connection to the club. He is our academy first and foremost. Let Port know whenever they enjoy his performances next year who made him. But that's the perfect signing. It knits it all together, and I think, look, I have to admit that's the best window of any club. Not just because of the players and the amount spent to bring them in, but also because it's the right profiles for the squad. So I don't know. I'm praising them way too much. This is painful, but I have to be honest. That's a fantastic window.
It really is. It's just good business. I think, like you say, every single time one of those graphics popped up, those interesting graphics, very heavy graphics that you're doing. Just going to throw that out there as a graphic designer. Very graphic heavy for 2024. I'll keep that. I won't keep that to myself. It's out there. We do more subtle things now in 2024. It's fine. Don't worry about it. They are great signings, though, and I think, like you say, every single time one came through, it was like, oh, Port's serious. So I think definitely praiseworthy. There are quite a few other notable moves, though. Which ones are standing out for you the most?
Yeah, so the big one is Chansrichawla Wongkon going back to the club that almost ruined his career at BG Patum United before he was valiantly rescued by the heroes of United. And Mr. So Chansrichawla Wongkon, fantastic player. He's become I think he started almost every game under Ishi for Thailand. He's Ishi's son. Ishi loves him. I love him. Used to love him, no longer. And he was meant to go sign for Shonan Bellmare in the J League. But then BG comes in. So their old coach, Makoto Tegura Mori, also loves Chansrichawla, but he was unceremoniously sacked last season, which is when Chansrichawla fell out of favor and moved to us. So Tegu wants him back. They offered 20 million baht, which is a pretty sizable chunk of cash for Muangthong at this point. And Shonan basically refused to pay Chansrichawla's full salary. They wanted to split with Muangthong, and Muangthong was like, "No, we're not doing that. We can't do that. We need to, we have other priorities. You have to sign players. We can't be paying a salary for someone who's not in our squad." But it really shows the limitations of selling to the J League as the primary market, because as we know, the J League are not very good at capitalizing on their players. They let their players go to Europe for really cheap, and the margins they can then make on Thai players are a lot smaller. So you see things like this where Chansrichawla is proven. I mean, he could get Ishi's recommendation if you want. You can see him play for Thailand whenever you want, but they still don't trust him enough to pay him his full salary, let alone a loan fee, which is really disappointing. So I was initially livid that he went back to BG because I thought he really wanted to go abroad. It's been his dream for a long time. He's talked about it for a long time. But financially, Shonan just wasn't willing to uphold their end of the bargain to pay the amount that's needed for Muangthong to justify selling him or letting him go. So he ends up at BG. In exchange, Muangthong loan in 3 BG players. One is Jakapan Praisuwan, the central defender, Thailand's best ball-playing center back, who I personally really love and won't shut up about. He's coming on loan to us. Their old keeper, Kittipong, I think he's in his mid 30s. He can help, probably be second choice for us at Muangthong. And Dennis Busha, who is a foreign player who doesn't have a quota spot, so we'll just take him. That's the first one. Do we go through all of them and just rattle through all the big?
No. I think we'll get on to some of the questions here, just because we're running a bit short on time. I mean, the other one that's definitely worth mentioning is Neil Etheridge to Buriram. I think when you get someone of his pedigree in for the 3-time defending champions, we were talking about Port making a statement. Boy, Buriram just kind of throw that signing down on the table, like, oh no, we're still here.
Yeah, they are.
Just a massive signing, and a good signing for the league as well. I think showing that Thai League is one of, if not the strongest in the region, and can help build a national team player's career. And I think Neil Etheridge is going to be a good fit there, and especially in a year when the AFF Championship, the AFF Mitsubishi Electric Cup, AMEC, I call it AMEC. I'm just going to put that out there in this episode, and moving forward, we're just going to call it AMEC. AMEC. AMEC, that's what it is. Big statement to get him in and to make that signing. The other ones...
That is. If he gets released to play in AMEC.
Well, that's going to be a whole big conversation we're going to be having come October and November, because October and November is a very, 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 very busy time in Asian football, which I think that's one other thing that we'll touch on really quickly before we get to the mailbag. There is a massive break, and I mean a massive break, in the upcoming Thai League season. Actually, before I step on somebody here, that I think that was one of the questions. It is one of the questions. So, yes, this came in from Adesorn on IG on Instagram. Got and slid right into the DMs there. Basically, it's a good thing that there was context here, because his question is just, what are other teams supposed to do during that gap? So, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, Buriram are going to be very busy. They have AFC that they're going to be in. They're going to be in AFF, the new Shopee Cup. They have the league. They have the domestic cups. They have so much going on. But for the other teams, what are they supposed to do? This is going to be a 2-month break in the league schedule for Thai League, which on one hand is great for the teams that are in these competitions, so there isn't exhaustion and everything else for the players. But 2 months, surely you could do some kind of scheduling arrangement that it's only a 1-month break, and teams like Buriram play a couple of midweek games ahead of time and afterwards to make up for that. Like, that's a really, really long break. Is that a mistake in your opinion?
Yeah, probably a mistake. Probably too long. Almost definitely too long a break. I have no issue breaking for AMEC, because it is a big deal for the fans, but you have to do something in moderation. Having this long a break is ridiculous. What are other teams supposed to do? Well, train, hopefully. Don't let the players play pickup games, hopefully.
Is there any reason you're bringing that up?
No.
Has that happened before?
Yeah, it's happened. At Sukhothai, it happened. And during the season, one of the players was playing pickup games. It's not good.
I know.
Yeah. And then ideally give the players a rest, because the rest was very short. I mean, the cup finals were like 3 weeks ago, and then preseason has already started. Most teams are already back training for preseason, like right now. So I think, I want someone to go ask the players, like, are you happy with the break or not? Because ultimately they're the ones who are affected. And I think, given how hectic this schedule has been, I think that they'll appreciate the break, honestly. Maybe it is a bit too long, but there's always room to give the players rest, do some training. it's a great chance to do a sort of a soft reboot. I think a few clubs did that last season who were struggling. Konkan United, for example, were really down there. They basically said, okay, we're going to pretend it's a new season. We're going to change everything and restart the campaign with a new coach. It worked out really well. They survived pretty comfortably in the end. And yeah, it's not great. It's not ideal, but I mean, it can be worked around in a way that keeps the standards in the Thai league. Yeah.
Look at you looking at the silver lining on this one. I think that's a great point about teams kind of being able to use it as a reset, especially those that are in the relegation battle or those that are mid-table wanting to make a push and get into some of these international competitions, which leads to our final question. This one was on Instagram as well. This one came in from Harold. And he is asking, are there too many tournaments for Thai teams now with the league, multiple cups, ACLE, ACL2, and the Shopee Cup? Is it too much?
Yes. So what I hoped would happen, which didn't happen, was that basically the teams, the best teams that don't go to ACLE and ACL2 get to go to the Shopee Cup. So if the title winners, FA Cup winners, and second place go to the Asian competitions, I'd want maybe the third place and League Cup winners to go, or fourth place and League Cup winners, or fourth and fifth place, whatever it is. The best two teams that don't go to the Asian comps get to go to ASEAN. That's obviously a selfish reasoning because Muay are usually in that bracket. A few times, fourth and fifth. So that's kind of the reason why as well. But I think it would make sense. I don't get why Buriram insisted on playing the Shopee Cup. They could have let us go or let someone else go, but they instead, are building up a massive, bulky squad in order to manage all the competitions. I think that hopefully by next season or the season after, when this competition is a bit more established, that the Thai league changes its rules and allows the next couple teams down to go and play in ASEAN instead of in Asia. But I don't know how often common sense prevails, so we have to wait and see. But if we just distribute it like that, I think it'd be a perfect distribution.
Yeah, I think timing-wise, it's a little bit unfortunate because I've said this multiple times. I'll continue to say it. I love the restructuring with the AFC competitions. I say it every time as well, and people are probably tired of hearing it. But the naming could have been better, but the restructuring, I think, is outstanding. I love the look of ACLE. I don't necessarily love that it's centralized, but ACL2, I think, is what I'm the most excited about. I think it takes the top and bottom end of that competition are much closer now. I think Challenge League, that being centralized does make sense. Love that restructuring. Had Shopee come in last year or 2 years ago, I think there was a lot more room for it. I think there is still room for it. I think it's a really great competition. And I think, talking to people from Europe or even back in the States and having like sub-regional competitions doesn't make a lot of sense to them. But I think it makes a ton of sense for ASEAN football to have this competition. And I think, like you say, after a season or two, I think that those teething issues will be sorted out because as Shopee was being formed, nobody knew what the restructured AFC tournaments were going to look like. So now that that's there, I think hopefully there'll be some wiggle room. And there already is a little bit where BG is not going to be as all over the place as they might have been 2 years ago, for example. So, and like in Malaysia, KL City, they're not as pressed as they were a short while ago. Terengganu aren't as pressed as they were a short while ago. Borneo, so for the other leagues, I think it's already kind of making a little bit more sense. And I think, like you say, hopefully for Thai league, after a season or two, they'll get in there. And I mean, look, you want the best teams in these competitions, but I think Buriram being in so many competitions, are they going to be able to send their strongest squad for this? So to me, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, let's get Muangthong back on an international stage and let's have them send their strongest squad. And let's see what they can do. And I don't think that detracts from the competition at all.
No,
right, because then I think you're gonna get some folks at the Thunderdome, and which what a name! I just love it so much. And they'll be there and they'll be excited about it. But that's one for next year. But I think there's a way to make this many tournaments work. It's just going to need just a little bit of tweaking. So hopefully we see that. But That's all that we have time for this time. Surprise, surprise, the two of us get together to talk about Thai League football, and it went a little bit longer than expected. It turns out that we've both got a little bit of passion here for this. But for the folks that are only listening and not watching, that haven't seen your Twitter handle the whole time, you've mentioned Twitter a couple of times. You're a great follow there. And if people want to follow you, where can they follow you there?
Oh, try and spell my last name. Have fun. Gian, Jan. Chansrichawla, and then a 1, because my last name is too long for Twitter.
We will tag him in all of the posts. Definitely be sure to give him a follow. And how long are you gracing these Asian shores before you head back?
I'm here until the beginning of September, so I get 5 Thai League match days in before I have to go back, and I hope to go to every Muangthong game between the start of the season and early September.
Just make sure you keep our good friend Talau out of the away games. I think he was 0 for 5 last year.
First one. We've already planned the first one. He's going. I think we're screwed, but he's going. Yeah.
Apologies in advance to Muangthong for that. I think Ta went 0 for 5 on away days last year, but you got to support. You got to love the passion of going to that. And I mean, and honestly, for folks outside of the region, if you find yourself in Thailand, you want to go to a game, the away days and I mean, if you're a neutral, then the home games are great as well. But the away days, what an experience. And if you want to watch a game, get that in front of you. And if you don't watch every week, the oho from the Thai commentators is just great. If you watch every week, it might not be as enjoyable. But get some of these games in your face when the league gets back up and running, and I think it's going to be another exciting season. And with that transfer window especially, I think Buriram's going to be right up there as always, but it's not going to be easy for them. I think it's going to be a really fun, exciting season, but we will leave it there for now for this edition of the ASEAN Game. Be back very soon with one that's yet to be confirmed, but it'll be an interview that I think you'll enjoy if you're a Thai football fan. There's a bit of a preview there. But in the meantime, please do head over to wherever you download your podcast and leave us a 5-star review. It really, really helps us out. And instead of leaving I mean, if you want to write a boring little review, go ahead. But if you want to instead tell us about your favorite stadium in Asia, then we might read that out in one of the future episodes, because those are always fun to hear about. But for now, Gian, thank you once again for coming on and chatting all things Thai football. And it's bye for now.